Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode. Well, we're officially, I think, on episode three, episode four. Okay, I'm sure. I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, I've been on a little sabbatical. I know you guys have been seeing episodes consistently, but I had to take a bit of some time, to focus on other things, good things that is. So please don't think I'm leaving the work of the Lord, to just relax and rest or, have fun. I was busy with other aspects, but absolutely excited to be back. Absolutely grateful to have this platform, and the difference that it's making. I think a lot of people have, just shared so much about, what this is doing. And it's so interesting because for me, I literally come out here in obedience, not knowing who I'm talking to, what I'm addressing, and things like that. But to not take any time, let us step into today's episode. So today's episode will be episode 5. Okay, and we'll be dealing with idolatry, a negative window to the heart. We'll try to find a nice little caption, but we're dealing with idolatry. Now we're going to look at what idolatry is. Can idolatry stop certain blessings or withhold certain blessings? And what is God's thoughts towards idolatry? All right, so number one, idolatry is it's an attachment, sort of, if we could put it like that, and a negative attachment at that to something, or negative outlook, when something has a place in our heart, and that place rather is above God, in a sense that if God were to tell you to let go of this specific thing, you would refuse, or you would just, it would be extremely like impossible for you to let go of this thing, and that is one of the key indicators that you are indeed idolizing something. All right, and it's important that we understand that idolatry is something that has to do with not just idolizing things, or having idols. I know a lot of people say, I'm not idolizing anything, sorry. My life is good, I worship God and only God. But remember, idolatry has to do with things that take the place of God in your heart. Sometimes it may be people. You idolize people so much that you're willing to do whatever they say, even if it's contrary to the will of God, or you idolize certain things. Maybe it's marriage, maybe it's relationships, friendships, maybe it's a dream that you have that you just idolize so much, that you are not letting God, give you, what he desires for your life, or the narrative and the direction that he wants you to go for your life. So idolatry, comes in many different ways, shapes and forms. And or rather, what's God's thoughts toward idolatry? So God, says, or rather Jesus, when he's addressing Satan, in the wilderness, when he's being tempted by Satan, he says that thou shalt worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. All right. So anything that brings us to a place of slavery to it for us to maintain, and maybe it's even a relationship where you are so stuck on a relationship that you compromise even your being, yourself, and your decisions, to keep this relationship, that speaks toward idolatry. So God is absolutely, he's not in favor of idolatry. He hates idolatry, he dislikes it. He does not want us to idolize things. All right, so it's important that whatever it is that you're idolizing in your life, you need to surrender it to God and give it to God. If it's money, your desire for money, maybe you now find yourself making decisions, or rather compromising yourself to get money, and that could be, maybe even falling into scams and things like that, because you just have this desire for money. You always want money out of everything. That could also speak toward, you idolizing, money. And the issue with these things is, when we idolize something, we will always compromise ourselves to keep that thing, to maintain that thing, to get that thing, and we make sure that we keep that thing. And you will always compromise yourself, you will compromise your standards. And that's why God hates idolatry, is that it compromises who we are as people, But God is now the resolution to these things. If you idolize money, you just have to surrender that desire for money to God, because he's going to provide for you either way. He has created you, and he has good plans and a purpose for you, and that has to do with you also having a good life. okay, because we are representatives of the kingdom, right? So everything that you desire, even relationships, it's important for you to surrender that to God. And if God wants you maybe to have a season 2 or 3 of solitude, it's important to embrace those seasons, because remember, he's dealing with you and working on you, and it's important that we get to a place where we are not compromising ourselves for the things that we want, because that would be very detrimental to our walk. And can idolatry withhold blessings from God? I believe that it can, simply because why would God give you something when he knows exactly that it will draw your heart away from him? Because he knows that some things we're not ready for, in essence, that anytime you idolize something, you do not know the truth about it, in all honesty to you. So it's like relationships. We look at relationships on social media and it's like, oh, I would love to have that, We look at certain friendships, and be like, I would love to have that. But we do not know what it takes to maintain a relationship behind the scenes. Remember, when people are posting, they are showing us the beauty of things, and they're editing, a short time, probably even a day or moments, of what they get up to, when it comes to the joyous moments of things. But we don't know the backside of things, that when God looks at things, he looks at the responsibility behind it, the maintenance behind it, because God gives things, whatever God establishes, rather, as I paraphrase scripture, it lasts forever. Nobody can take from it, nobody can add to it. So the issue is that if we are idolizing things, we are not looking at what it takes to maintain these things. We are not looking at what it takes to steward these things well, to pour into these things, to water these things. We are just looking at the fact that, ooh, this looks good and this is beneficial. And the issue with that is the enemy then has this trick that he has, that he will then throw counterfeits at you, or a counterfeit of what you desire, and you will accept it because, number one, you think it's from God, number two, because of your impatience. Anytime you're impatient about anything, it is not from God. God is patient. So the moment you get you get an opportunity or something, or even someone that comes into your life and you are just rushing everything, or everything seems rushed, you don't have peace in it, it's not from God. So God wants us to get to a place where we don't idolize these things, but where he is number one in our lives, and he teaches us how to steward these things. So if you want money, you must go to God and ask God, okay, what do you think about money? How do you want money to be spent? How can I align myself in such a way where you can trust me with money, where you can trust me with friendships, or you can trust me with a relationship or marriage and various other things, maybe even if it's a business, you have to ask God what he thinks about those things, so that he can reveal to you what it is that it takes to steward those things. Because the truth of the matter is, when it comes to the beauty of things in life, or things we idolize, we look at the front picture, this person in the headlines, and this person, just making a difference, and this person succeeding, and all of those things. But we don't look at the back part of those things, So if you want a relationship, in front of people, it can look like it's the best thing and all of those things, but behind the scenes, it takes work. Friendships take work, and the grass is not always greener on the other side, or rather, it's not greener on the other side, if you think of it. If you're looking at somebody else's friendship, somebody else's relationship, somebody else's life, that is set for them. And there are still certain things that they have to go through, in order to be better for the things that God has blessed them with, things that they have to do to maintain their relationships, and they water their friendships and things like that. They do have disagreements and things like that. So if you look at it, we always tend to think that, oh, that friendship is better than mine, oh, that lifestyle is better than mine, oh, that desire is better than mine, and we don't appreciate what we've been given and what we've been blessed with. And the issue with that is that we tend to then overlook the actual responsibility of what we have. So whatever God has placed in your hands, it's what's sufficient for this season. And remember, God still desires to bless us, right? So he's not wicked and says, okay, you're not ready for that, I'm not even going to answer you. No, he will then start preparing you for what you're asking for, right? Because he doesn't want you to just stop at this desire and then, move to something else, but he rather wants to prepare you for what you're asking for. So whatever it is you're asking for, there is a period of waiting, because God has to prepare you for that. God has to change you, cultivate you. And the number one thing that God will deal with when you ask him for something is your motives. Because if you want a relationship solely because you saw it on social media, that thing, works for someone else, may not even work for you, that specific kind of person you're looking for. So the reason why we want things to God is also very important, because remember, he loves the people that he's sending into your life just as much as he loves you. So he's not going to send people into your life when your desires are misplaced, because then you are now taking advantage of people and you find yourself, in circumstances where, things are unfavorable. Sorry, I'm sure you guys just heard the lightning, So these things are important, that when we ask God for things, we know exactly what he thinks about them and what he feels about them. Because when we idolize things, we tend to think we know what these things are about when we have no idea what they're about, and then we mishandle what God blesses us with. It's the same thing with money, that if you idolize money so much and you're not ready for it, you will get it and you will blow it. And remember, blowing it even on good things is still mismanagement, and it's something that still offends God. So it's important that when you ask God for something, know what he thinks about those things, but above and beyond that, surrender it. Even if God has given you a promise, maybe God has given you a promise and he said, hey, I'm going to do this with your life, I'm going to make you this, I'm going to make this out of you, and all of those things, surrender that to God. Because the mistake we make sometimes is that we idolize promises so much that sometimes we even ill-treat people along the way. That let's say, for example, God is like to someone, I'm going to make you the president, and you then realize that, hey, I'm the president, so this person, what is this person to me, or things like that, so you have that element of pride when you're idolizing things, because when God requires things, remember when Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, and God had told him, no, go sacrifice Isaac. This is a promise the guy waited for I think over 20 something years. Now you can imagine, all of a sudden now he has to sacrifice his promise. And he's waited for this. He's been faithful in waiting for this. Now he has to sacrifice it, And God did that to test his heart. So he didn't actually go through with the sacrifice. But God was seeing that, okay, this thing that I've blessed you with, can you sacrifice it? Or will you be willing to sacrifice it? And because he was faithful in that moment, that he was so surrendered to God and so submitted, even with the promise that he was given, that he was like to God, you know what? This you can have. Because there he goes, he puts Isaac, ties Isaac up and things like that. And, he's about to sacrifice Isaac, and then that's when the voice comes from heaven, So we need to be able to be so surrendered and submitted to God that if there was a situation where we would need to give these things back, or God would test our hearts, and not to say God is going to be testing everything, so please don't fear or worry, but it's just to say that we should be surrendered, because remember, things that we don't surrender, the enemy also comes to attack. So that's why the enemy frustrates the areas where you love certain things the most, because he knows, for me to get this person's attention, for me to frustrate this person, I'm going to attack this very area, So it's all a tactic for the enemy to attack and frustrate us and all of those things. So that's why God desires surrender so much, so that, you are completely surrendered to God to the point where whatever the enemy tries or whatever the enemy does, your strength is in God, your joy is in God, your hope is in God, and whatever changes in life doesn't affect you. So it's important that we live lives where we do not idolize the things that we want from God, but where we surrender them to God and we appreciate them. So in essence, ladies and gentlemen, if you're asking yourself, can idolatry withhold blessings from God? Yes, it can. Prime example we see with Abraham, that for him to receive the promise of him becoming the father of many nations, and God blessing his seed and multiplying it, and us knowing Abraham as the father of our faith, or our father in the faith rather, he had to surrender Isaac. So it can withhold certain blessings. That if you want certain things, God will not give you something if he knows it's going to take your heart away from him. But he's a faithful God. He will instead work on you, work on that area, work on your motives, your intentions toward that thing, and then bless you with that thing. So I hope that this episode blessed you guys. I thank you so much for getting to the end of the episode. I hope that you learned something, and that, you were able to grow from this episode, and that it really change something in you, that it's helping you to also get to a place where you surrender and submit to God, and where you just allow him to lead in your desires. So I absolutely love you guys. I appreciate you guys, and I'll definitely see you guys in the next episode. you.